AI has been always there, and specifically in the network world, we've always looked at how we can move from reactive to proactive to predictive to preventive, or where you can open your ticket, AI can open a ticket even before a event occurs, right? A 7-day future ticket which it can open.
Raj, so excited to kind of have you on the Built for Trust podcast. Really been looking forward to this for all week. There's Tata has been part of the community for a long time, but we never really got to really dive into its business and its value prop to the community. So we're going to do that here. But I think before we start that, one of the key purposes of these podcasts is to kind of inform the community of its thought leaders, which you are clearly one of them. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time for everyone to get to know you. So you spend a little bit of time, talking about your background and then also what you do over at Tata.
Sure. Nick, it's always good to speak to you. I always learn something new every time you speak. So,
Thank you.
and thank you for this opportunity. Love talking to you and love talking to the people around. My journey in Tata Communications has been very, enriching for me, and I'm hoping that it has been enriching for the company and for the clients that I've worked for. So I started way back in 2004, and I've had many roles in various geos in my career out here. Starting from India to APAC to Africa to Middle East, and now in the US. Interestingly, I've seen some parts of Africa and worked in some parts of Africa where people go to visit for tourism, but I've seen how telecom works there, for example, and loved working across the world. So yeah, happy to share that I've had a very good enriching career till now, and I'm looking forward to many more years in Tata Communications.
Yeah, how awesome. It's interesting when you travel to places outside of vacation. And you get to actually work business wise. It's a very different experience.
Oh yes.
It's a very different experience. I remember years ago, I was doing some consulting work, in early part of my career, and kind of helping companies move into TCP/IP. And the state of Alaska, hired me. So I got to go up to Alaska and spend quite a amount of time, you know, um, in Juneau and in Anchorage, and getting to know a lot of the folks up there. So, and then understanding their infrastructure and the challenge that they have. So I am sure that you have all of these really great models, and you know what the state of particular infrastructure is in various different parts of the world. So that's usually valuable, and that's not too many people really get that within their career. So it's great.
Oh yes, absolutely, Nick. One of the things that I've seen, and I'm not saying that the a lot of people are like this, but many people that I've seen think that what they have or what they see in their country, for example, in the US, it's a developed country, it's a developed infra. It's the same across the world, which is not true, right?
Mhm.
If you go to a Botswana, if you go to a Tanzania, Kenya, etc., or if you go to the Philippines or Vietnam, the infra there is very different, right? What you expect out here, for example, in Ghana, you know, power is a big problem.
Mhm.
In the US, you never think about power, right? Power will go out if there's a big storm. Otherwise, you have stable power here, right? So when we think about infra and it's very different in various parts of the world, and therefore learning it and thereby one bringing value to those parts of the world, and then also sharing that with my colleagues, with my clients, by saying that, hey, if you're planning to go to Ghana, then these are the things that you need to think about, right? These are the things that you need to ensure that you take into account when you think about the business case. So that's a very interesting learning
Hmm.
experience that I've had through my working career per se.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's a great experience, and you're so right. It's that I obviously I'm a U.S. citizen. I live in the states, so I'm really used to our infrastructure. And if I never traveled, I would think everybody has the same infrastructure. It's like you just don't know, until you're out there. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Tata, and then kind of specifically what you do for Tata. So what brought you kind of all around the world?
Sure. So, like my journey in Tata Communications, Tata Communications itself has gone through a journey. So, Tata Communications started as a voice and data player. And over the years, we have kind of pivoted and we are re-christened as a digital fabric operator at this point of time. So, think about it like this, that when you think about a very large enterprise, then you'll have different fabrics for them, a network fabric which will connect their offices, their shop floors, their factories, etc., etc. Both internally, meaning the LAN, it may have private 5G, LoRaWAN, and then externally, which is the WAN, which connects the data center or to the cloud and so on and so forth, right? Then you'll need something which is called the cloud fabric, right? How to connect to the cloud, because multi-cloud today is a big, black box for many enterprises. They
Yeah,
don't know what's happening out there. How would you actually then choose a cloud? Do you go private cloud? Do you go public cloud? Do you have your own data centers? What should be your, best cloud infra or architecture per se, given your applications? So that's the cloud fabric. Then comes your IoT fabric. IoT fabric today is extremely important for any organization, specifically if you're in manufacturing or retail, because your number of IoT devices have actually gone through the roof,
yeah.
right? And then comes your interaction fabric, meaning that today what we are doing is we are using a collaboration platform to record this podcast, right? You use this or Teams or whatever else to communicate with your clients or with your colleagues. And then you use contact center for your clients to call in or you to call your clients. And then you use various channels like SMS, WhatsApp, mails to do whatever you want to do
Hmm.
to again engage your clients or your employees, right? So that's the interaction fabric. And all encompassing this should be your security fabric, meaning that how do you secure everything, whether it's the network, interaction, and so on and so forth, right? So Tata Communications have pivoted from being only a network and a voice player to giving this fabric back to our clients. And in this journey, one of the things which becomes very interesting for us is that we are becoming more and more relevant for our clients, right? So we used to have a very specific discussion about only network and how it is going to make a difference to them, to many other things, many other facets of how a specific organization is transforming themselves. I'll take an example. If you think about a shipping company like Maersk, who
Mhm.
has a massive architecture when it comes to IT, whether it's the contact center architecture, whether it's the network architecture, and so on and so forth. Specifically, companies like that grow with acquisitions,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it becomes more and more complex for them to manage. So when you think about a company like Maersk, which is hundreds of years old, you can think about the complexity that they have, right? Solving that complexity, working with the client to see the joy
Hmm.
of bringing to life some of the things that is there on paper is what gives us the kicks and what gives me the kicks,
Hmm.
right? So that's what is in it there for me. and that's the journey which is very enriching and exciting for me.
Yeah, well, that's really great. So thanks so much for that perspective on Tata. Let me see, if I kind of got it. Obviously, started with telecommunications and voice communications, and then as the market started to evolve, especially into cloud and clearly multi-cloud, we've been banging on that multi-cloud door for a while. Finally, the door just blew open. A couple of years. Actually, really, it was around COVID. The door just blew open, and everyone's kind of multi-cloud now. So you have a kind of a fabric, built on top of that infrastructure that allows for multi-cloud kind of communications into like a wide range of different cloud providers, which is what I'm assuming, and probably SaaS providers as well. There's a security overlay on top of that.
Yep.
There's also an IoT, I would think, an aggregation, for that, because there's an intersection obviously between telecom and cloud and IoT, the sensor and the extraction and distribution of a lot of that sensor data. So I would think, so there's that, as well. So I would think that the kind of the digital infrastructure piece is the cloud and the IoT and the security, and clearly the kind of the computer networking, the kind of the internet, piece of the infrastructure. Does that kind of capture it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, Nick.
Yeah.
On the same page here.
Yeah. And what's really I think I want everyone to really understand is that, that might sound okay. Yeah, of course, a lot of companies are doing that. Tata is doing that at scale. It's like you are, a big multinational, company. And it's like, companies like Merck will go to you because they are all over the planet, with their ships, and their cargo. So if you're a large multinational, which is a lot of, kind of the ONU community, Tata lives in that world. And it kind of goes back into our earlier discussion about your career journey. That's why you've been in all these different countries, because your business has been taking you there. So,
Oh yes,
okay.
oh yes. So it's a very, very, very interesting point, Nick, and this is what is exactly what we bring to our clients, right? That some of our competition are very good in specific geos, and I respect and love those my competition. But then when it comes to truly global operations, that's where we shine,
Mm,
right? If you are, say, for example, if 90% of your operations are in the US, you will work better with an incumbent out here, with somebody who is local and so on and so forth. But if 60-70% of your business is outside of the US, while you're a US headquartered multinational,
hmm.
you'll struggle to get the same kind of
Yeah.
love and respect and attention from the incumbents, and the same kind of solutions in places like China, Philippines, Nigeria, etc., etc. And that's where we bring the value,
Yeah.
because we understand the local. We are truly global, while we understand the local, whether it's nuances from a regulation perspective, whether it is nuances from, is the power there? If you go to Ghana as an
Mm.
example, power is a big problem. So we know the local nuances, the regulations, the policies, and will help the client to actually meet those things in a much, much better manner.
Yeah, and that's used like even like data sovereignty, and like where can data move and where does it need to be reside within that. So like my mind kind of goes to like, like FedEx, UPS, it's like, really large companies, US based, but multinational, companies with operations literally all over the world. Pharmaceuticals, financial services, clearly manufacturing, shipping, logistics. I would think that those are probably some of your key and core kinds of clients,
Absolutely.
that leverage Tata. Okay, great. All right. I want to kind of like, so I think everyone who has listened to this now has a good understanding of who you are, Raj, and then also how Tata, fits into like the ecosystem. So let's dive down a little bit. Like we've spent a lot of time within the ONU community helping to define and promote the SD-WAN marketplace, which was, we did that, back in what, 2012, 2011, 2012 timeframe. And the community is really proud about that, that kind of contribution. It's like a $5 to $7 billion market now. And so they've been focusing now on really kind of SASE and NaaS in particular, NaaS being network as a service. Because I think, just a little context and then we can kind of dive in. The NaaS piece of this, which really I think plays really well with that kind of highly distributed geographic footprint that Tata has, is it's trying to, I wouldn't say trying, but it's like the compute industry is always years ahead of the networking industry. So, we saw in 2007, AWS come on the marketplace with S3 buckets, and that kicked off the cloud space. um, Apple iPhone was around the same time, coincidentally, as well. And so cloud has been around, for almost like 22 years, something like that. And the networking space hasn't really kind of, so we had compute and storage move into a cloud model, and we really haven't seen networking. And I think that's really where the kind of the opportunity for NaaS is do you really need to own all of this infrastructure? Do you really need to operationalize it and have large staffs? And when you're really highly distributed, like a lot of the companies that we just mentioned, the NaaS model really shines. So you guys have a product. What is it called? I think One Tata NaaS. I think that's the name of the product. If I'm wrong with that, please correct me. But let's talk about Tata's participation in the NaaS marketplace and how you are participating and the kind of offering that you have.
Uh, Nick, the first thing I'd like to say is that, I really appreciate what you and Onu brings to the table, right? You help
Thank you.
a lot of enterprises to kind of come together, bring their views, consolidate that, bring to the OEMs, bring to the market, bring to a lot of operators like us to solve a common problem, right? And there are a lot of common problems at this point of time, and so thank you for doing that job, right?
Oh,
Because it helps everybody. It helps the industry as a whole, right? As you said, you actually talked about SD-WAN a long time back, and it's a large market at this point of time. Now, coming to NaaS, think about NaaS in a few buckets, right? So I'll kind of break it down so that it's easier to understand. So the first bucket that you have to think about is the LAN itself, right? When you think about the LAN, a typical enterprise today is a combination of wired plus wireless. Most of us are connected to wireless at this point of time. Now, on
mm,
the LAN part, therefore, doing network as a service is kind of easier, right? Because there you can say, okay, if you have a mid-side office which has 50 users, this is how the NaaS architecture would look like. Easier to operate, easier to demonstrate, easier to then operationalize. Same would be there when it comes to the security apparatus, a firewall, whatever you want to keep at the edge, or it's a SASE architecture which you want to keep at the edge, right? This complexity starts the moment you touch the last mile, right?
mm-hmm.
Because no telco in the world will own fiber on the ground globally. It's simply not possible.
Yeah.
Therefore, what needs to happen there is what is your understanding with the local telco? Have you shook hands with them wherein they are also participating in the NaaS journey with you,
Mm,
right? So that becomes the interesting journey and the start of the journey, right? Then it comes to the middle mile, which is your own network, which will have to have the OSS, BSS, and the operations to back it up, meaning the NAS journey. And then will be the 0 mile. 0 mile is the last mile or the connectivity into the cloud, right?
mm-hmm.
Or into the cloud and between the clouds, right? Which we call as MCN and MCC.
Yeah.
So now, the 0 mile, which is the MC and MCC, it's easy to manage, control, and we can do it very easily. Middle mile, easy to control, manage. We can do it easily. The last mile is where the maximum challenge is,
Yeah.
right? And the office network is again easily done, right? So it's a journey that we have done, right, where we have deployed NaaS in a controlled manner for a lot of enterprises, where, for example, if you want to, for example, deploy an office, right? You can have an office in a box with a variable, bandwidth, connecting the office, connecting the cloud, and so on and so forth. But it is not global at the moment, and there are handshakes that we are doing with various telcos across the world where it will truly become global.
Mm.
Now, on the other hand, Nick, what hurts us, when I say us, is a lot of telcos actually go to the market and tell the client that I have NaaS, and that is bandwidth on demand. Now, NaaS is
Oh,
not bandwidth on demand,
oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You're actually demeaning the whole network as a service. Network as a service is exactly what you said, right? I want, I have an application. I want to actually deploy it wherever I want, in whichever form I want, and I should have the capability of just closing it down wherever I want, whenever I want, right? That's the definition of NaaS, which should also be very clear to our clients that, okay, you are in retail. I will spin up. Let me use that word. I'll spin up a retail shop. I'll keep it for however long I want and spin it down if I don't want it, right? And everything which is associated with it should come in the network as a service. So it can be, the network which is required is the access points, the switching gear, the SD-WAN slash SASE device in the retail shop, to the last mile, to the middle mile, to the 0 mile, right? So everything should be as a service where the retailer, for example, a Nike or whoever, right, should not care. They should just say, I am coming up with a 10,000 square feet single floor, retail shop in New York.
Hmm.
This is the address. Spin it up for me, and if it goes down, you should be able to spin it down. So we are working towards that. There are a few, challenges in the way. The biggest challenge being the last mile ownership, but we are working through it,
I
Nick.
wonder. So, like, on the last mile, like, this has always been, you know, ever since the, you know, kind of the what was it, decree in 1984, with the breakup, of the Bell system, in the states. Anyway, the last mile has always been an issue. And so and also it depends on which country you're in as well. Depends on their infrastructure, that they have. How much is satellite starting to impact that? you know so obviously we have there's Starlink, and there are other competitors to Starlink. Amazon is putting a lot of money and resources into that too, so not as a blanket service, but just as it gets added to the mix. So what's your thoughts on kind of satellite as part of the last mile solution?
Satellite is a good option, but again, let me kind of break it down in two parts, right? When you think about satellite, it's not a primary option when it comes to the enterprise, right? It's more of a
Mm,
backup or a tertiary option at the moment.
yeah.
The reason being that the bandwidth which it can offer today is limited, right? It can go max to 400, 500 meg.
Mhm.
If you look at a typical enterprise today, aside from a retail shop, I'm not counting the Nikes and the AutoZones of the world, a typical enterprise will have a minimum gig connectivity into their enterprise office space, right? So, think about your own office space, anybody else per se, they will require higher bandwidths.
Mhm.
Then, if you think about the satellite, actually, a satellite is not an end-to-end last mile. It's actually a partial last mile, because at the end of the day, the satellite transponder is in the country, right? So if it's a country to country communication, it will go through undersea. It does not
Hmm.
go all the way
Yeah.
through satellite. From a LEO perspective, I'm not talking about MEO or geostationary per se.
Right. Yeah.
There, the latency is the killer, right? Latency becomes too high for any enterprise application today to survive, right? So Leo is a very good option when it comes to a partial last spine. It has beautiful use cases which it can do presently, but cross-border is not really the option per se. And also from a design perspective, since it has limited capacity, we don't look at it as a primary, point of connectivity. Plus, when you think about a Leo, in network as a service, what becomes very, very interesting is, can I switch from, say, 100 meg to 200 meg to 300 meg to 400 meg
Yeah.
as I want it, right? In Leo, you'll have to say what is the bandwidth at any point of time. You cannot
Mm.
switch very easily. Whereas if you are connected on a fiber, you can easily
Mm.
switch between slabs,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's 100 meg or a gig or a 10 gig. And enterprises today, truly, when we think about NaaS, we want to have that capability. So it's not that we are ruling out Leo, but it's an option. Is it the best option? The answer is no.
Yeah. And I would think there's I hear what you're saying. Like actually I have Starlink, I'm not using it, now, but you know, I think the last time I measured it, it was about 200 meg and latency was around 30 milliseconds,
Yep.
was a latency, which I thought was like really good. It doesn't compare. And to your point, like I also have Comcast, which gives me like, over a gig, it might be, yeah, definitely over a gig. And I never really measured the latency there. Really kind of no need, it's going to be low latency. So I guess the only thing I'm raising is that you are, Tata is such, your geographic span is enormous, and so there's got to be some places where it's just going to be really hard, to get almost any kind of
Oh,
bandwidth.
yes.
So that's got to be, an option. And then also too, like two kind of use cases popped into my head. One are pop-ups, right? So like you have a retailer, they want to pop up, a store like really quick and just keep it there for a couple of days and then close it down. You know, that might be a good option, but you guys might have other options as well. But so I can kind of see that spinning up, spinning down. We found this is probably all over the world too. It's that during COVID, there were all these pop-up clinics, and those clinics had to be equipped, with a whole kind of suite of networking, and other kind of compute services to service the doctors and the kind of administrators that were there. So this whole dynamicism is really key. And I get your point around latency and around bandwidth. Where where kind of low orbit satellite doesn't fit all use cases, but I would think that there's clearly got to be a role for it in there somewhere. But anyway,
100%.
yeah. So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
And
yeah.
good point, Nick. Specifically, when you talked about pop-ups, it's a very interesting concept. That's where the advent of 4G, 5G has really helped us,
Mm,
right? Because that's a very, very quick and easy option for us to just
good point.
use the network as
Yeah,
a last mile.
yeah,
But think about Leo. One of the other things that you have to think about is that you have to put something which is a huge, dish somewhere, right? So if you are in a mall, and if you're in the first floor of the mall, if you're a popper, for you to get a space to put your dish may be a bit tricky,
yeah,
right? So, and then doing the cabling all the way from here, specifically if you're a popper, is not the best option. 4G, 5G,
yeah.
I can just give you a small thingy and it has everything. It's like a pop up in a box kind of a solution, up and running, and say, okay, I'm done, and just move away with that.
Yep, you're absolutely right. But also, too, Raj, you could just have the dish outside, and then that's attached to a Wi-Fi router, so you still have Wi-Fi access to the dish, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we.
And then it can be used by many other, offices or pop-ups, right? You are giving me some ideas, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So, all right. So, great. Thank you for actually a really, great kind of discussion. And I think what I really want to continue to remind everybody about is when you're talking, Raj, we might be, giving an example of like, how a point of sale just gets spun up really quick. Um, but remember, like, Tata's, customers are like, it's not just one, it could be 10,000, and so there's that's not kind of I want to make sure that that is always kind of in people's mind. We're really thinking, okay, that's great that you can kind of do that, but they can do it at scale, which is,
Yep.
in really diverse geographic locations, around the planet. So, okay, now operationally, especially around NaaS and also around SASE, AI is getting applied, and so let's talk a little bit about that around what you're thinking and what Tata how they're investing in AI in the operational aspects of your NaaS service. So, like clearly, it wouldn't be AI going to the customers, but the customers are going to get the benefit. It's almost like an Intel Inside kind of dynamic, right? It's like the investments that you're making to make your operations either easier for yourself or just to make it more reliable, make it more available, make it more secure. That translates and those values, move to your customer. So
Yeah,
AI,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. So, Nick, specifically when we think about AI has been there for some time now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you and me have been always talking about AI, but then with Gen AI coming, everybody
Mm-hmm.
getting to know ChatGPT in everybody's mind, AI is now Gen AI per se, but AI has been always
No,
there, and
no.
specifically in the network world, we've always looked at how we can move from reactive to proactive to predictive to preventive, or where you can open your ticket, AI can open a ticket even before a event occurs, right? A 7 day future ticket which can it can open. So this journey for us started long back, specifically with the global infra that we have, and the amount of voice that we carry. It was extremely important that we are in the journey, we do it for ourselves. Uh, Now, when we did a few things which became very interesting for us, we started kind of taking it and saying that can we also implement it to improve the network productivity and therefore for a client, right? I'll give an example. When you think about AI, specifically say you are my client. Today, if you have to look at your ticket history, right, you have to go to a portal and then kind of see your ticket history. You need to understand what went wrong at what point of time and so on and so forth, right? What if, taking Chat GPT's example, you can chat with the portal and say, when is the last time my link went down, or what's my uptime for my network, or what is my the locations which has the maximum bandwidth utilization, least bandwidth utilization, and so on and so forth, right? So there are facets of things that you can take from what you have done for your network and start passing it on to your clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of making the clients more proactive, so that, for them, we can say, hey, 90% of your tickets are proactive, meaning that I open the ticket, you don't have to. That improves your experience with the client. And by the way, I can tell you that our NPS score is one of the highest in the world from
Mm.
a telco perspective. We stand at 80 plus, right?
Uh,
Which you'll hardly hear from many other telcos per se. And this is the reason, right? So from an AI perspective, it's always a journey, right? So we started the journey by saying, how can we make our network more, proactive, more preventive per se? And then we have started taking this to our clients by saying, hey, you have a very large network, and it can be multi-operator. Uh, I can take what I have built for myself, put it for you, and then it can tell you that, for example, if a network element for you may be going out in the next 7 days, it'll open a ticket, a future ticket, do some activities, or ask an engineer to do some activities. And if the probability of that going down, for example, a router going down or a card going down, comes down below a probability level, the ticket will be closed, right? So that's the direction that we are going,
Mm.
right? In terms of one, making AI really, work for us and our clients.
Yeah, it's well, it's key. Like the whole, you know, being able to address alerts and tickets, before they become issues is huge. Because there's so much noise, in that. So being able to kind of automate, a large amount, of those, that's that is kind of, it's like most network engineers are like perfect, I don't have to deal with it, the system already dealt with it, for me, and especially, I remember like years ago, this is a long time ago, the kind of computer networking, all the networking vendors, we started to like, branch out, and all of a sudden remote access became a really big marketplace. And I think it was because like, SNA was, giving way to like TCP IP at the time. And so we were starting to then do studies around, okay, well, what's the total cost of ownership of like remote access versus like campus or data center, and obviously the operational cost goes way high because they're highly distributed, they're far away, it's harder to troubleshoot them. So I think like, especially like when you're talking about, there are alerts and alarms, that are occurring within kind of a customer's partitioned part of their network, and you're able to manage them. That has a huge weight because all of these facilities are going to be pretty far away from them. So
Oh, yes.
so it really adds a tremendous amount of value in that context. I think I remember that in some of those studies, and I don't know what they are now, but maybe they might have shifted, but I'm not sure if they shifted that much. But like capital cost was only like about 25%, and then the vast majority, other than kind of software, the kind of the lifecycle management software, the management software, was another slice. But by and large, the biggest slice was around operations to manage that. So having,
And Nick, I'll give you an example out here.
yeah.
One of the things that a lot of people don't really look into unless it hits them is correlation, right?
For
Correlation in
sure.
today's complex journey is exceedingly important, right?
Mm.
Now, say you are in a Starleaf or a hub and core, core architecture, or whatever. It's a complex architecture of today, right? Whether you're in the cloud or you're in your own data center. If one of your main links break, the number of tickets it may generate can be hundreds,
Yeah.
right? Now, correlation in a situation like this is exceedingly important because, as an enterprise, you'll start getting calls from a user who will say, my application is not working, or I'm not able to, kind of boot, or I'm not able to use my exchange. So that's a ticket, to people saying that I can't access this, to a ticket, and so on and so forth. So there can be hundreds of tickets,
Yeah.
whereas the main issue may be one ticket wherein one of your main lines have gone, right? Maybe both the primary and the backup is gone, or whatever reason, right? So the correlation can save you, again, if not tens of thousands of dollars, at least a substantial part of your, productivity from a knock perspective, from your operation perspective.
Yeah.
this also is plays an important role when you look at the entire network as a whole, right, rather than in parts. Because if you look at it in parts, you're going to have a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really good point. Getting to root cause, is extremely difficult. The bigger, the more complex your network is, and I think I'm not sure like what structure that Tata has put in, but I think the problem that we've had in the industry is that we have this haystack model. And what I mean by that is, so you have all of these devices, and actually, you guys are in this really good position, right? Because like you have the telecom infrastructure, you got the cloud, multi-cloud infrastructure on top of that, you got security, and you got IoT, right? And so there are emitters, that emit, state data, traffic data, system data on all of these different devices, and and you might partition it for a particular company's network, but you're getting alerts from all these different parts of the infrastructure. And so what happens today, and I'm saying with Tata, but it's that you have literally petabit, depending on the size of the company, but petabytes of friggin' data just around system data, and those get
Oh yes.
centralized into a data lake, and then something goes wrong, and you can represent that something as being a needle, and then that needle is thrown in that haystack, and then the network engineers have said, go find that needle in that haystack. That's that's kind of like the model today, and I think where we're going as a community, as an industry, is to agentic AI, right? And so, can you start having agents that are widely distributed all across that infrastructure in telecom, cloud, security, IoT space, and where the agents can communicate with each other. And there may be a controller agent, or it might be an agent of agents, where your particular team can collaborate to try to understand what went wrong, or query the infrastructure. The agents should be able to kind of identify, hey, I just have this link that's flapping on and off, and that could be root cause like right away. And once that flap is going on, you're starting to see other alerts and alarms going on. So the bottom line is that I think a lot of the industry is moving away from this take all the data and centralize it to try to figure it out, but put AI closer to the data. Don't distribute it, keep it local there. And then when things start to go wrong with that particular device, look upstream, look downstream, toggle, communicate with the agents to try to understand root cause. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's what you
100%.
guys are doing already. I don't know.
Yeah. So Nick, absolutely. Um, you know, that is where everybody wants to reach, right? We are a good way into the journey. I'd be happy to show you what we've built till now and what we are giving to our clients. It's a very, very exciting thing. A lot of our clients who have seen it, who are experiencing it, have actually come back with very positive inputs.
Hmm.
You talked about the needle in the haystack and the issue about of the engineer, right? Let me add some complexities out there.
Okay.
So if you think about a LAN today has, say Meraki as your Wi-Fi, so, Cisco as your switch. And I'm not going beyond Cisco now. Then Fortinet as your firewall, Zscaler as your SSE, and say Versa as your SD-WAN. By the way, it's a true kind of implementation for enterprises where they will have multi OEM for different things.
Yeah.
Each of them will say, I have a portal,
Right.
correct?
Hmm.
Now think about the engineer. If there's an issue, they have to look at five, six different portals, right? If there's a patch update, they'll have to look at five, six different portals. The issue starts from there today. The complexity of a network. I've not even gone to the WAN where they can have 40 different telcos who is operating in a global scenario, and then into the MC and MCC where they may have a plethora of other players, right? So the engineers' work today has become exceedingly complex because of this. Because everybody says I have a portal, everybody says that I have a AI in that portal. So the poor engineer says that I don't want one more AI in one more portal because I'm going crazy. Nobody's collating the whole thing, right? So today the majority need is, can everything come together, right? The answer can be everything is one OEM, which I don't think will be a possibility. One, because the true use case does not really, or may not really be very, very interesting for the enterprise for one OEM, right? So there will be a few different OEMs also from a region perspective, right? So in that scenario, bringing it all together is what we believe is a platform play, which needs to happen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, the poor engineer, there'll be 20 different haystacks with one one small little needle, right? And that guy is going crazy.
Yeah.
And so is the top line and the bottom line, the managers and the people below that. So you are right. That is the journey that we are on, and that is the journey we need to solve. And it's beyond everything, right? Think about it that tomorrow, if you add the cloud mix out there, meaning that you are a true multi-cloud operators, which means that you are in at least three, if not four, five clouds. So there will be a complexity from that angle also, right? So how do you bring everything together and make life easier rather than more complex for enterprises is what we need to think about.
Yeah, it seems like really, actually, a good topic to bring up, and but it's like it's almost like, okay, do we need a federated AI controller, AI agent controller, right? So it's like where there's maybe some agreement across the industry on a certain amount of information that gets somewhat standardized and passed
Yes.
across them, so that you can actually do some kind of toggling into like like you have like five different vendors. They all have their own specific agents. There needs to be at least some core standardization there. Potentially, I don't know. That could be one model. The other model is that the AI agents can get like so smart, as a federated one, is that it can then do a translation. With all of them, so it provides kind of a translational service, canonicalizes, all of the data, and so you can actually now have by communications, even though like so you have English from the operator, and then that gets translated into like the five different languages associated with the agents. So I think there's a bunch of like different models that were emerged, but Raj, you picked, there's no doubt that is a
The problem to
complexity,
solve.
yeah, that's out there, in the marketplace, and it needs it. And what's really great is that you guys are there as well. Like, you have a lot of those companies, and the companies that you mentioned, a lot of them are, part of the AI networking summit. So we should kind of try to do something, with
Oh,
everyone.
yes.
We are going to have, actually, there's a breakfast that we're having with Tata. So it's invitation only. But this could be maybe a good topic to bring up like during that breakfast time. So
100%,
during the summit.
100%.
So
And maybe we should bring some engineers out there who will be bleeding through their eyes in terms of what they're going through at this point of time, right?
yeah,
I'm sure they cry by thinking the old one vendor, one OEM scenario to now 50 vendors, and 50 OEM scenario. They're really crying right now.
yeah. It's yeah. There's the only place where I find like hope in there is that the um, the innovation curve around AI, hopefully is going to be greater than usually it's the proprietary interest of the particular vendors, because we haven't had this before. That's why we have this needle in a haystack problem, because like no one wants to standardize on
Exactly.
what the notifications are, what the system level notifications are, what are the logs, what are the alerts, and having common definitions across them, you know, um, because they view that as being proprietary, and it's a
Exactly.
lock in, for them. So I'm kind of hopeful that this
And
can
that
move
is
us.
where, Nick, I think, Onuk, Tata as a group, we need to step up, right? We can't ask an OEM to build something for another OEM, right?
Yeah.
They may not be that interested about that, but somebody like us who manages multiple OEMs, somebody like you who speaks,
Mhm.
from client's angle, from OEM's angle, we have to step up and we need to bring something like this to foray. And whoever is building, anything, so we are building something, for example, right? And it needs to go through a journey. That journey needs to be nurtured. That needs
Mm.
to be, it won't be, star class from day one. It needs to learn. It needs to be better.
Yeah.
How do we make that better? That's the role we have to do from our part. Otherwise, we'll always be stuck in this rut.
Well, frankly, I love the idea of, we have the collaborative. I love the idea of, like, for lack of a better term, kind of an AI controller or a federated AI mechanism. Yeah, Raj, we should talk a little bit more about that and kind of explore that, in Dallas on the upcoming summit. So
100%. Yep.
awesome. Okay. Raj, I think we're kind of out of time. I really enjoyed this. I really, really got to understand Tata, you, and I think just the overall discussion of kind of the overlapping between telecom, cloud, security, IoT, and then with the NaaS and IT or AI context. I thought actually that was really, really cool, really fascinating. So great chat with you.
Absolutely. Nick, it's as I said in the beginning of the meeting, always great to speak to you. I always get something new out of our discussion, and I'm looking forward to meet you in Dallas and having some discussions over a cup of coffee and take things forward.
God, I can't wait. Raj, thanks so much for the time.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much for being part of this. And thank you, everyone, for plugging in and listening.